The following is a presentation of Retro Sports Network, home of the champions of the past, present, and or future. Why, hi there, my name is Ron Chuckett, and thanks to Roberto Schiavini, we take you back to December 4th, 1983 for our latest project on the channel, Skiing. Yep, World Cup Skiing. 37 men events, 34 female events from the 1983-84 season. Every slalom, every GS, every Super G, every downhill, and, in time, the Winter Olympics of 1984 from Sarajevo. So we start with the men's downhill season. The first race of that from December 4th, 1983, from the middle of the Austrian Alps. Schmlading is where we're going to be for this. 46 skiers throwing 2 wooden boards on their tiny little ankles and running down a mountain as fast as nature and their body can carry them. Yup, it seems to be a bit of a crazy sport, but my dad, the late Hank McKee, loved it and covered it, and all these names, well, some of them anyway, are names I know, and some we're going to find out about together as we go along the way. This technically was the second race on the calendar for the men. I did the downhill, doing the downhill first. The slalom was actually done over the weekend in another place, and when I get the slalom thing set up, we will do that. But first, let's take a look at who should contend for championship glory in 83-84. Now, these are the raw ratings for the skiers. What we do in World Cup Skiing by Roberto Schiavini and his games is everyone's assigned a class on monitor number 2. I have a form and a time chart, which I might show you at some point along the way. I could just move that over to the other screen. And so you see where the dice, my ball roller is. We play the game with 2 6-sided die, those are the red, and 1 10-sided die, that's the blue. And so we'll make first adjustments to form. So you'll see where people's classes are. Let's say in the case of Billy Johnson from the USA, who is listed as the 3rd best raw skier on the downhill circuit in this particular season, he is an H. So depending on what I roll on the form, he could either improve or he could deteriorate. And we'll get through that as we go along. So I'll make the adjustment, and then when I won't do those rolls online. And so after everybody's adjusted and their new letters there, I'll come back and show you. And then, once the adjustment's been made and you know what everyone's new class is, you then roll as the die here, and then we'll give you a time. The better the class and the lower the roll on the 2-sided die, the better off you're going to be against that average time. In Schmlading, the average time of the race is 1:58.09. And so that's the time that we're going to roll off. And so obviously, with any downhill race, the best time is the winner. Top 15 score points. There were 46 skiers. And so the ones to watch, Erwin Resch of Austria. Remember, in Austria, downhill skiing is the national sport. Urs Reber of Switzerland, who won the downhill championship this season. Billy Johnson of the United States, he's a cowboy and a half. Franz Klammer, you remember him from the 1976 Winter Olympics in Innsbruck, Austria. One of the Flying Canucks, Steve Podborski. Franz Heinzer of Switzerland. Anton Steiner of Austria. And Perman, I should know this by now, Perman Zurbriggen of Switzerland. He's going to contend for the overall title, but he does all the disciplines: downhill, Super G, giant slalom, and slalom. Other names you might know: Todd Brooker from Canada, one of the Flying Canucks. Peter Wernsberger of Austria is pretty gosh darn good. Stephen Lee of Australia. Yep, there's an Australian skier on the list. If we go down, Doug Lewis of Waitsfield, Vermont. Oh, helps if I hit the right button. Okay. And Phil Mayer of the United States. Yep, there's even a British skier, Martin Bell. Phil Mayer was not a good downhill skier. His specialties are coming up in the slalom and the giant slalom race. So one run for everybody, and we'll get to the top 15 and some others in a few moments here on Retro Sports Network. Our coverage of World Cup 83-84 is brought to you by DigitalDice.com, the best podcast on the web for your sports simulation and replay needs, and Ski Racing Magazine. All right, we'll be back after the rolls to show you who you're going to see on the broadcast. So after qualifying, not a surprise that the home Austrian skiers did really, really well, and the top people on the tour kind of slid down. Franz Heinzer will go out last. He had a magnificent training weekend here in Austria. He improves his form by 4, and he will be the man to beat when we get there. Franz Klammer, the wily old veteran, improved 1. Erwin Raschener's Robber, who should be contending for the downhill title, had bad training weeks. Robber lost 3 spots on the list. Perman Zurbriggen should do quite well. Bruno Kernen of Switzerland gets -4. Podborski had a bad week for Canada. Catherman for Switzerland had a good week. They'll be K's. Not good for Bill Johnson. The top American slides 4 down the list to an L, along with Todd Brooker, Peter Wernsberger, Peter Muller, and Anton Steiner. They go off as L's. Again, a lot of good things for the home squad. So we'll show you the North Americans and the top 15 right here on Retro Sports Network, our coverage of World Cup Skiing 83-84. So as we have our first North American skier, Philippe Vernet from France as our leader. We've had 6 go down the mountain, and he is 0.3 of a second off that 1:58.9. So he currently leads the race with a 1:59.2. But remember, we've only had 6 of the 43 skiers go down the mountain. So none of these should be a surprise to regulars. There's no one here that's going to point. If you're wondering how Martin Bell of Great Britain did, he had the worst run. He is 0.87 seconds off the pace, so he really is in the high 1:59s. So on Phil Mayer's card, we're going to read off the V column. And the V column, he cannot improve the time. He could possibly, depending on a very nice low dice roll of a 2, or a 2, get into the current lead, but he's not going to point this week. So you add up the red die, and that blue die is going to be the 100ths of a second die here. So let me roll the die for you. And Mayer down the mountain rolls a V8. So 8V is a half second off the pace. And when you add that 4, it's 0.54. Which for the moment gives him 4th place. So not a bad run for Phil. As I said, the best he could do with his form and stuff was lose 0.2 of a second to the average. So if you look at that, he would be 1:59 and 44/100ths of a second. He won't point, but it's not a bad run for Phil. When we get back to the more Northern American skiers, we'll be back. So the next 2 skiers being North Americans, let's update the board. We've run 12 down the mountain so far, and Peter Luscher of Switzerland had a pretty good run. He did not have a good training form. He lost 2 to fall to an S, so he can't gain time here. But he has a 0.06 of a second lead over Philippe Vernet, who we saw before. And Phil Mayer sliding down the column here, but that should be about as bad as he's going to get, as the worst of the skiers are down. So Peter Luscher, king of the hill right now, he's at home in 1:59 and 14. As I said, 0.06 of a second ahead of Philippe Vernet, and a full 0.13 of a second ahead of West Germany's Peter Durr. First in our run here is Gary Athens of Canada. Going to be reading out of the R column. He can actually take the lead with a combined roll of 4. He rolls a 7. And we're going to add 4 hundredths to it. So 7R is going to be, oh, that's unfortunate, 0.34. Now from Vermont, Doug Lewis. He's reading off the R column too. Can't break, but he can take the lead and might be able to backdoor some points. You never know. Oh, no, he won't. 11R and a 9. That's the worst result you can get, kind of. So 11R, ooh, a slow run. And 0.59 seconds off the pace for Doug Lewis. So a good run for Gary Athens moves him into 3rd place, a 1/10 of a second behind Peter Lucier. That might get him into the points. We'll see. The best skiers, of course, you'll see in their entirety going up. For Doug Lewis, I think he'll be disappointed. He actually had a worse run than Phil Mayer. 5th from the bottom, almost full 6/10 of a second off the time. Well, a change in the leaderboard. A good run by Sepp Wildgruber of West Germany has him 12 hundredths of a second leader over Peter Lucier before we get to the best of the skiers. But a good run for Sepp. He had a magnificent training run. He knocked 3 off his form to go from a T, which the best you can do is a 1/10 of a second off, to a Q, which means he can actually run the race average. So his time at the moment of 1:59.02 leads the race as we get close to the final 15 skiers, which you'll see in their entirety here. I don't know what I did. All right, so Paul Boyven, who had a good training run, goes off as a P. He gets a -2 in his form. I don't know why that's showing that up there for Podborski, but we'll get to that in a moment. So Boyven, can he knock off? He can actually take the lead with anything under a 2, 3, 4, or 5. He rolls an 11. That won't help. 11P is, it's 0.4, and you see the 9 there. Oh, disappointing middle section there. Knocks him a half second out. So we'll have the conclusion of the race in our next update. And friends, Herbert Reynolds just made the most unbelievable run. He just nailed all the sectors here at Schmlading to roll an amazing 0.15 against the average. So he now, I don't think he'll win the race, but he's going to get he's going to get some points in a week that you didn't think he was going to get any. He finishes the course in 1:58.75, and right now he has a 0.27 second lead over Sepp Wildgruber, who also had pretty good form. So Renault and the West Germans, they got to be happy. Right now on the podium, they're sitting 1-2 with Oscar Del Lago, 3rd, 0.14 off the pace. But what a race by Renault. And so Stephen Lee of Australia gets the magic dice roll, and he, imagine that, also finishes at 1:58.75. The Ty Renault for the lead. Ivano Marzola, 1:58.93 is 3rd. And Wildgruber, his good run, still has him in 4th. He should do something pretty special before this one's over. 16 skiers are left in the blocks. Let's get to it. We'll resort these every 5. Klaus Gotterman in the gate. He had a wonderful training week. We read out of the M column, 11M. That's not good. That will be +2 And 5 is... He'll be disappointed by that. 25 seconds, or 25 hundredths of a second off the pace, a quarter second. Next, Peter Muller from Switzerland. Did not have a great training week. He loses 1 on the form. He's going to read out of the M column. We roll a 6M, and a 6M is a nothing. And so just 0.01. So right on the average pace. That should get him some points, but it won't make him contend for the win. Peter Wernsberger, now out of the L's. 4 skiers out of the L. America's Bill Johnson. Austria's Anton Steiner. Canada's Flying Canuck Todd Brooker, and Wernsberger here. The lower the better. 8L is a 0.2. So he's 2/100ths of a second off the average, but that's not going to do it. Todd Brooker, reading out of the L. A mediocre training week. He lost 1 spot on the form. And down the mountain he goes. 9L is not going to help out his cause. In fact, he's quite disappointed with that. That's going to be 1/1500ths of a second off the pace. Not the start he wants. Anton Steiner from Austria. Really one of the rare Austrian skiers to have a bad training week. When you see Klammer coming up and Weirather, they had tremendous weeks. Steiner, down the mountain. Ooh, 10L. That's not great. That's going to be +2, 3. So as we sort the standings again, here's a look at our top 5. Herbert Renouf with in at 1:58.75, tied with Australia's Stephen Lee. Yep, I'm amazed by that too. And they have a clear lead over Peter Muller of Switzerland, Peter Wernsberger of Austria, and Ivano Marzola of Italy. And everyone else is within the 10th of a second. So right now, you need to have a minus result to win. But the best skiers are coming up. Next out of the gate, America's Bill Johnson. He's going to ski out of the L column. The lower the red die, the better, and that's a terrible run. He got a 12, which is the worst you can do. A 12L is a +3. Oof. And he finishes 0.35 off the pace. So he's not a good run at all. Now, Conrad and Kathaman from Switzerland. Out of the K column, and he got the best possible roll. He'll be your leader. What a run. He's 0.38 seconds ahead of the pace, and now leads by 0.2 of a second. Next up, Steve Podborski from Canada. He heard all the cowbells coming down the mountain for Kathaman, who put up an incredible run here. So Podborski gonna have to match that and get a lower blue die. So he needs a 2 combined in the red and a 7 or lower on the blue to win. He rolls a 7 on the K column, which is -1. That's gonna get him some points. That should get him into 4th, I believe, at the moment, which is not bad. Bruno Kernen from Switzerland. Heard from the top. Had a great training week. -4. That's the best you can do. Heard from the walkie-talkie. Just what he needed to do to win the race. He's reading on the J. 7J is -1. That could have been better. -0.15. Now one of the hometown favorites, Helmut Hoflener, reading out of the J column. Had a good week of training, gained 1 round of form. 7J is -1 and -1.16. And I believe that puts him second behind Catherman. And now let's get the official results here. There are 6 skiers to go. And Catherman leads by 22 hundredths of a second. That's huge. Hoflener second. Renault and Lee and Kernan, well, tied for third. We'll do a bonus roll there just to see. Podborski, a good run. He is now technically 1, 2, 3 in 6th place. And that's the only 6 that are actually under average so far. But Catherman really running down the course at 158.52. Next up, Raymond Zurbriggen. The best skier in the world in this particular year. Maybe not the best downhiller, but he should put up a good time. We're reading out the J's, and he can take the lead with a roll of a 2. He rolls a 7. J is -1.5. 1.15. And so we'll do a re-roll for those. We can go to 1,000th of a second. That's what we'll do. Urs Robber, who is the overall downhill champion in real life, takes it for the first time. 7J is a -1 and a 4, so that's huge. He will not be caught in that huge run at 0.15, so he should finish in the top 4. Erwin Resch, reading out of the I column. A 7I is -29. And with 3 skiers to go, that puts him in 2nd place. Almost a full 1/10 of a second out. 3 skiers left. Catherman with a 1/1100th of a second lead over Resch. Hoflener in 3rd with a 0.16 above average. Then Renault, Lee, Kernan, and Zurbriggen. We'll have to go to some tape to determine that mess. Raber not kind of falling down the wayside here at 14 hundredths of a second below average or above average. And Podborski right now would be in 8th place. So 3 skiers left. If you, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So Anton Steiner is on the bubble at 0.23. And so if you're in the top 10, you're going to get some points. But Catherman, all smiles at the bottom of the hill with an 11/10 of a second lead as we go to the last 3 skiers here in Schmlading. And 2 of them, of course, are going to be Austrian, Hardy Weirother. And everybody's up on their feet. You can hear the cowbells. Up, 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 up. Reading out of the G. He had a fantastic week, but gets a terrible roll. And it's going to be 0.13. He'll be mighty disappointed. He could have won this race. So that will get him some points, but it will not get him what he was looking for. And now everybody's standing up on the side of the mountain for Franz Klammer, the 1976 Olympic gold medal champion in the downhill. One of the craziest races ever. On a G roll, he can win this thing potentially with a roll less than 5. Read the red. It's an 8. He won't win, but he will finish at minus 0.24. So good points for him. But here's Franz Heinzer. We're going to read out of the E column. He wins the race with anything under a 7. Anything under a 7 wins it for Heinzer from Switzerland. Down the mountain he goes. He rolls a 5 on the E, which is minus 50 flat. And he's going to win this thing by 12 hundredths of a second. What a finish. So Franz Heinzer last out of the gate with a big win. 12 hundredths of a second. At this speed is amazing. Konradin Kathemann of Switzerland 1-2 for the Swiss. He finishes at 0.38 above average. Erwin Resch, who's expected to contend for the downhill championship, third, 0.29 above average. And Franz Klammer, the old veteran, finishes fourth at 0.24. Let's get a quick roll on these last 4 here for Renault, Lee, Kernan, and Zurbriggen. So Lee, okay. Kernan rolls 8. So the final standings here. Franz Heinzer of Switzerland wins. He skis the Schmlading in 1:58.4. Konrad Kathemann in 1:58.72. 12 hundredths of a second, and then that's a pretty good distance between second and third. 11 hundredths of a second for Erwin Resch, and then another 5 hundredths of a second back for Franz Klammer for fourth. Helmut Hoflener of Austria finishes fifth at 0.16 above average. So 2 Swiss skiers and 3 Austrians. Lots of hometown fans happy about that. And so to finish up the top 10, Bruno Kernan in 6th, Hermann Zurbriggen in 7th, Stephen Lee of Austria, where'd the heck that come from? 8th, Herbert Renault of West Germany 9th, and Urs Raber is 10th. Hardy Weirother, Steve Podborski, Peter Muller, Peter Wernsberger, and Ivano Marzola finish up the points. You only get points for the top 15. Hey, if you like this, we'll certainly do more. I'm Ron Juckett. Thank you so much for the debut of World Cup Skiing right here on Retro Sports Network.